I would call to order the Village of Westmont Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for our November 12th meeting. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Fidesco, Commissioner Pill.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas. Here. Commissioner Van Buren is here, Commissioner Carmichael.
Here.
And Commissioner Bartel,
Here.
and Chairman Richard.
Here.
We have a quorum.
If you would please all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While I have you all standing, please, anybody that's going to give any testimony tonight for or against any item on the agenda, you got to be sworn in. So if you'd please raise your hand. I swear that any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
I do.
Okay, consider yourself sworn in. I would ask that you silence any and all electronic devices. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our October 8th meeting. May I have a motion, please?
So move. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Pill. A question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes, Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Pill,
Yes.
and Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay, the minutes as presented are adopted. Old business, we have no old business. Next item is new business. Planning and zoning item 14033. Laura and Gary Michlich. Michich.
Mikachich,
Thank you for helping me.
of course.
Regarding the property located at 340 South Grant for the following. Item A, zoning code variance request to permit the construction of a 6-foot solid wood fence in the side yard adjoining the street in the R3 Single Family Residential District.
It's actually not for wood.
Yes. Now, would you please address specifically the hardship
Okay,
that
so,
you are experiencing to qualify for a recommendation for variance?
Okay, so,
And- Before you go, it's my mistake. Would you please all sign in when you come up to the podium to speak?
okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So the front of our house faces Grant, and the side of our house is 55th Street. So we've had a wooden fence there, 3-foot wooden fence there for a number of years. And because of the snow and the salt from the road, our fence is just a disaster. So we want to do something that's more permanent, durable, salt resistant, road salt resistant, which is vinyl. And vinyl comes either 4 feet or higher. To get it 3 feet, we could do that, but it would be custom made, and then it would just be cost prohibitive. So we were hoping to get 4 foot or higher. So I guess that's the hardship. I don't know. And then, so we were thinking, so I took some pictures from around town, and there are fences that are 6 feet that are along 55th Street.
Maybe you could address the fact that if you complied with the zoning ordinance requirements, you'd have a fence down like the middle of your
Yes.
backyard, and how
Exactly.
that
Thank
would,
you.
what the hardship is from that.
Thank you. So my understanding is that it has to be 15 feet away from the property line or the sidewalk. And that would come, it'd be about a third of our yard. Our backyard would be cut into a third. And it would look very strange from the street to have a fence. It would just look crazy. So that, I think Jill figured it out. It was like 1,000 square feet of our backyard. So the sidewalk is here, and then you can see the width of our backyard, and then this is what's permitted right now.
All right. Let's go to the public then. Is there anybody from the public who will speak on this issue, either for or against? Seeing no hands raised, we'll close the public comment. Staff, could you please help us?
Sure, thank you. The applicant came in to replace her fence and stated that she would like to have something with a little bit more privacy due to the concern about being on 55th Street with the noise that's associated with that. And then over time, her fence has deteriorated because of, weather and salt and things like that, which is why she'd like to move from a wood fence to the vinyl fence. And she said that she would have liked to have met the code, but the vinyl fences come in specific sizes, either the 4-foot or the 6-foot, which is why she'd like to go to the higher height, both for privacy concerns and because, she'd like to get a standard size so that she's not spending more money on a custom fence. So she said that she would like to do the 4-foot fence, but she'd obviously prefer the 6-foot. So I said, the commission could weigh whether, a 4-foot or a 6-foot or meeting the code might be more appropriate, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
And no line of sight issues if the fence were to be located more or less along the sidewalk?
Correct. I actually drove on Grant Street and then also drove over to the alley and just, peeked out to see, whether there were any concerns. And there's actually some shrubs by the alley that I'd probably recommend be cut back. But the fence itself would not have any line of sight issues. And we also checked that out on the plat of survey. So, and we also sent out a code enforcement officer to check it as well. And there's pictures in the packet.
Yeah, there's a photo.
I would agree with you, Jill. Also, your shrubs along the alley,
Yeah.
between the driveway and the alley? That last shrub, as it's by the sidewalk, it really cuts off the sight line.
I never drive that way, so I
I
never
know,
thought of
but
it.
The garbage men do, and
Yeah, no, I
Does-
just never thought of it.
it should be cut back.
No problem.
It should be cut back. Okay, let me get my list here. Let's start with Commissioner Thomas, if you would, please.
Yeah, I agree that the shrubs need to be, trimmed back, but that is not an issue or a problem
take care of
at
it.
all. I parked in the alley also, and I don't think there's a line of sight problem. Once you get the bush fixed, the new fence will
Yeah, I was just gonna get it.
not be a problem.
Okay,
So
good.
what do you
Petition first.
prefer?
I would
6 or
prefer,
4?
I would prefer a 6-foot just for some privacy, more privacy and a sound barrier. But,
I don't know how much of a sound barrier it'll be, but sight-wise,
better.
and you can actually have a backyard.
yeah.
The joys of a corner lot.
Yeah. I mean, we knew that buying, but we had some things taken from our backyard, which I thought was a little strange. So a little bit more security too, I thought would be good too.
Right, and okay, and, no, I don't have a problem because everybody who, this isn't automatic, so it's a case-by-case basis, and so I don't have a problem saying yes to this and maybe no to next instance, so I don't have a problem with this one.
Great.
All I have.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas, it's been suggested to me that each commissioner, if you have a preference for 4 to 6, express your preference. So would you have a preference between 4 and/or 6?
I would not, since it's not my fence, but I do not have a problem with the higher height of 6 foot in this instance.
And that would be our preference.
Commissioner Van Buren?
I feel the same way that 55th Street is a hardship within itself, especially if it runs the entire length of your backyard. And I think that the 6 foot would be fine with me.
Right?
Commissioner Pill?
I would support a 6-foot fence also. I visited the property, and you can see that's a perfect setup. There's other ones on 55th Street. I agree that the bush, the first one, needs to be cut. And then just for clarity, the fence does not run to the alley. So
Right.
there is a detached garage, and the fence stops well short of the alley, yielding to a driveway and a detached garage before we get to the alley. So that allows for a lot of extra visibility And I just wanted to clear that up, as we talked about various constraints to visibility, that's really not a function at all. Support it.
Commissioner Bartel?
Clearly, it does need to be replaced. I'll certainly
Yeah.
agree with that. And I think the 6-foot is fine. I didn't see any other vinyl fences in the area, though. So it would be a standout type of fence. But I understand the hardship being you don't want your backyard to be diminished in terms of, going along with the zoning. So I would support the 6-foot.
Great.
Commissioner Carmichael?
I guess I do have a couple of questions. The current or the zoning ordinance as it stands is for a closed fence is 30 inches, 2.5 feet.
Okay.
And you currently have an open, the fence that you're replacing is an open fence.
Okay, yeah.
And so, 4 feet is considerably higher than, already than the 30. So I think, I guess my other question is, are there a number of 6-foot fences along 55th Street? There already are that
I think
have,
there's two others that
that
I saw
have,
today.
and they've received variances for that. They're closed fences.
I think they were grandfathered in.
Yeah, some have been grandfathered in, and some have received variances over time.
I think I would favor the 4 rather than the 6.
He figured 4.
Okay, and I myself, I favor a 4-foot fence. I don't like the 6. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't like a fence, period. Especially a solid plastic one. But I would ask you this, your existing fence is about a foot in from the sidewalk. And would you have a problem putting that fence on the street side of those two big trees?
So do you mean
Cut it back because,
maybe leave now we're kind of on the sidewalk, maybe a foot back, and you're suggesting to put it 2 or 3 feet back?
yeah, about 3 feet, something like that. You
No, I mean,
You
we're
still
kind
have-
of, no, it's fine, whatever. As long as it's not 15, we're very easy.
Yeah, there is a 6-foot plastic fence down at Hudson.
Yes,
There's one I know. And across from you at 335, there's a stockade fence, which should be burned, but anyhow, my opinion. A 6-foot fence I don't favor because pulling out of your driveway with a 6-foot fence running right up to your driveway could possibly present a sight picture for oncoming westbound traffic on 55th Street. If you were to pull out on your driveway, tight to your, the east side of your driveway, if you were to enter on 55th Street, they could present a possible sightline problem. So I would favor a 4-foot fence myself.
and do we need to decide if you guys say 4 or 6? Do I need to decide tonight, or is the option just still open?
We are only a recommending body.
Ah, okay.
The village board is the one that will determine yes, no, 4, 6, or whatever. So sometimes they listen to us, sometimes they don't.
And Chairman, there seems to be a bit of a disagreement as to 4 versus 6, and maybe we can break it into 2 motions. One, a motion to grant a variance to allow a fence in the side yard adjoining a street, and then secondly, maybe to allow that variance for a 6-foot fence versus a 4-foot fence, and the vote will be whatever it is, and the minutes will reflect, but at least that will give some clearer direction to the board as to the fence height, perhaps, if they know there was some dissenting vote as to a 6-foot.
Okay, so if we were to be unanimous in agreeing with a variance for the side yard adjoining, and then if someone were to fail on a 6-foot fence, which is what's published, trustees could gather we favor of 4.
Right.
Okay, I'll go along.
The other question, though, is you've suggested moving the fence, and that has not, I suspect that we are until you mention that we are approving what we see on the drawing.
And if-
Yeah.
But, true. But
I-
even if the lady were to move it back to where the trees are another 3 feet, it still would require a variance.
Yeah.
So where it's finally placed, that could be between the village and the lady.
And what would worry me just a little bit about placing the fence back by the trees is just that they could get the posts in. That would be my only concern. You know,
Yes.
because the trees are kind of
Those
where
are
you're
big
talking about.
trees.
What?
Those are big trees.
They are big
You're saying
trees.
if you move the fence back 3 feet,
Yeah.
you're closer to the tree roots?
Exactly, and the tree trunks, actually. So I just am not sure if they could do the posts. That would be my concern.
So we'll just forget what I said.
Okay.
Don't even let that worry you.
No problem.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees under Planning and Zoning Item 14033. Item A zoning code variance request to permit the construction of a fence in the side yard adjoining the street in the R3 Single Family Residential District.
And I'm sorry, I should have interrupted you first. Commissioner Pill reminded me, we have to do findings of fact on this. It's a variance.
I'm in a rush tonight, John. I think there's,
I should have reminded you.
nah, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We do need readings of the findings of fact if we could have them, Joe.
Yes. 340 South Grant Street, request for a variance to allow a 6-foot solid fence within the side yard adjoining the street. Criteria number 1, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it is located. If the applicant were to strictly comply with the current zoning regulations for fences in a side yard adjoining a street, the applicant would lose the use and enjoyment of a significant portion of their rear yard. Having a fence which runs down the middle of their rear yard would have a negative aesthetic, functional, and financial impact on the property. Criteria number 2, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. The proposed fence will provide improved privacy and security for the rear yard and will create a sound barrier from the property from heavily trafficked 55th Street. The fence will not impede the lines of sight for motorists or pedestrians. Criteria number 3, the variation if granted will not alter the essential character of the locality. Several other properties in the area have similar fences with no adverse impact on the neighborhood or the community in general. The proposed fence will be an attractive and durable vinyl fence which will not alter the character of the neighborhood.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. Okay, we are findings, all except Commissioner Carmichael and Chairman Richard. The findings of fact are hereby adopted. I would entertain a recommendation, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees under Planning and Zoning Item 14033, Item A zoning code variance request to permit the construction of a wood fence in the side yard adjoining the street in the R3 Single Family Residential District.
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Van Buren. A question on the motion. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
No. Okay, I would, under advice of counsel, I would entertain a second motion for an item B, a zoning code variance request to construct a 6-foot fence in the side yard adjoining the street in the R3 Single Family Residential District.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Van Buren, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Do we have a question on the motion? A roll call, please.
Commissioner Carmichael?
No.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes, and Chairman Richard.
No. Okay, you have our recommendation for both items,
Great.
and staff can tell you when you'll go before the committee of the whole.
Perfect. Thanks so much
Okay.
for your time.
Good luck to you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Next item, Planning and Zoning Item 14034, AT&T regarding the property located at 3500 Midwest Road, Oak Brook, Illinois, for the following. Boy, that gets me, Oak Brook, Illinois, every time. Can't we change that?
It's up to the post office, and we can't control it. We've got a lot of residents who have Downers Grove or other town mailing addresses, and they would like it changed, and we've reached out to the post office, and they say no.
Okay. Anyhow, item A zoning code variance request to permit more than 3 antenna on a structure in the B3 Special Development District. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Andy Fitz. I'm with Mastech Network Solutions, and I'm here on behalf of AT&T tonight to, as you stated, request a variation to allow for AT&T's equipment and antennas to be installed on the top of the Hilton Resort at 3500 Midwest Road. The current zoning ordinance allows for 3 antennas, and AT&T would like to install 12. And so that's the reason that we're here tonight. As far as the hardship is concerned, AT&T's network cannot operate on 3 antennas. They operate on 5 different frequencies using 4 different cellular technologies. Cricket, the current wireless carrier on the rooftop, uses 1. They use CDMA, which is commonly known as 3G. AT&T would like to significantly upgrade the wireless facility there to 4G, but they also accommodate GSM, which you would know as 2G, as well as 3G. So to accommodate AT&T's network and to significantly improve service in the area, we simply can't do that on 3 antennas. So that's the reason we're here tonight. I believe staff distributed a copy of the project summary as well as the construction drawings, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
So if you were to install a monopole adjacent to the hotel to get the heights and everything else, you could say that it would be prohibitively expensive
Yes.
as against just putting the antennas on a roof?
Just to put 3 antennas on?
Yeah.
Yes, it's not something AT&T would consider doing.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public who will speak on this issue? Seeing no hands, we'll close the public comment. Let's start with Commissioner Hill, if you would, please.
I have no questions at all, supported.
Commissioner Van Buren?
Same?
Commissioner Thomas?
If, yeah, I have a couple. So you won't be replacing any antennas?
Yes. Yes.
You already have, AT&T has antennas up there now.
Actually, Cricket has the antennas, and AT&T recently acquired Cricket nationwide. They've acquired their network and their cell sites. So what AT&T is in the process of doing is incorporating those customers into AT&T's network and upgrading all of the Cricket facilities, because all of the Cricket wireless facilities have 3 antennas. And so for AT&T and our competitors, nobody else uses 3 antennas. So this site, as well as many others in this area, we're in the process of upgrading.
So they don't interfere with one provider?
No.
Antennas don't interfere with your competitors if they're up there also?
No, we do not.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Carmichael?
AT&T leases space, as it were, on the roof from
Yes.
the
We'll-
resort?
Yes, we'll basically
As do
be
others?
assuming the lease that Cricket had with the Hilton.
So the restriction on the ordinance is actually to the building. And there are currently 25 antennas, and the ordinance limits it to 3?
Correct.
Yes.
And so the
Technology
question is,
moves
what's
on.
another dozen? From everything I read, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to have any more impact than what's currently there.
I think one way to look at it would be if you were to limit to any monopole structure to support antennas, we would have conceivably 15 poles around the neighborhood up there. So what better thing to do than to
I understand.
congregate them all upon one roof?
I have no objection.
Commissioner Bartel?
I have no objection. I support it.
I also, sir, but I think it's a good thing you're doing.
Thank you.
Staff?
As part of the application process, we also request that the applicant look to exchange them in kind if that's possible. And that way, if the applicant were taking off 12 antennas and then replacing them with 12, then you wouldn't necessarily see that as part of the variance. In this case, they're not able to do that, which is why they're requesting the variance. And staff is fully in support as well, because we also do not want to see additional, poles out. As you can see in the pictures from the staff report, it's very difficult to see the antennas from a distance. And we got a few phone calls from the neighbors, and they didn't even realize the antennas were up on the roof now. So this is a good use of co-location.
Okay. Any further commissioner comments? No. May we have a reading of findings of fact, please?
AT&T requests for a variance to allow more than 3 antennas on a structure at 3500 Midwest Road. Criteria number 1, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it is located. The property currently contains approximately 25 antennas on its roof, where 3 are allowed by code. Co-location of telecommunications facilities are preferred in order to reduce the impact on surrounding properties. Allowing this variance will potentially eliminate the need for a standalone antenna tower, and granting this variance will allow the applicant to yield a reasonable return on the property. Criteria number 2, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. The expansion of telecommunication antennas at this location will benefit the public through improved and expanded service, and will lessen the impact on adjacent properties due to this co-location of antenna facilities. Criteria number 3, the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. The proposed antennas and equipment will generally be shielded from public view due to their location away from the roof line. The antennas equipment will be co-located with existing antennas facilities, and allowing this equipment will not alter the essential character of the area.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement. Therefore, the findings of fact for a variance are hereby adopted and approved. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees under Planning and Zoning Item 140303 for Item A, zoning code variance request to permit more than 3 antenna on a structure in the B3 Special Development District.
So moved?
Second.
That was Commissioner Bartel by a motion and Commissioner Pill second. Question on a motion. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Pill,
Yes?
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes?
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes, Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes.
and Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Chairman Richard.
Yes. All right, so you have our recommendation for approval, and staff can tell you when you go before the Committee of the Whole for the trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Next item, Planning and Zoning Item 14035, EFN Westmont Property LLC, regarding the property located at 115 East Ogden Avenue, Westmont, for the following, in the B2 General Business District. Item A, a special use permit request to construct a parking lot. Item B, site and landscaping plan approval to construct a parking lot on a site with an existing non-conforming building with non-conforming setbacks and screening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Well, my name is Glenn Contreras. I'm an owner's representative to EFN Westmont Real Estate Company. And the hardship of the property is that Napleton Porsche dealership is currently growing. And their employees and some of the inventory is being parked on adjoining streets. Because of that, the residents are beginning to become very irritated on that. Therefore, we need a parking lot. The plot, which is in question at 115 East Ogden, became available. The owner that I represent purchased it, currently closed on it this past 31st of October. And now we are in process of looking for a demolition permit to demolish this existing hotel that it currently exists right there. What we're trying to do is make an aesthetically pleasing parking lot there. where the employees can currently park right there. They're at this point in time are parking right there, but they want to expand by destroying the building and adding on more parking spaces, and also having the ability to store inventory there also. So other vehicles, brand new vehicles there. We just want to demolish the motel, but not the back building that currently resides there.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody from the public who will speak on this issue? Seeing no public comment, we'll close. Staff.
Demolishing the hotel building and using the site for parking will alleviate a much-needed parking concern in the field right now, as the applicant mentioned. We have received lots of complaints from the neighbors about ongoing street parking from employees. And one of the conditions of the special use we would recommend is that it be used for employees first and then inventory later, only if that's, an overflow. And the existing building in the rear, the innkeeper building, would be just retained until the property can be fully developed, which would be in line with our comprehensive plan. We'd like to see several of the properties put together and then redeveloped as a whole when that time is appropriate.
I see by the fire department comments in here that the rear building, the landscaper of the building would not be occupied unless it was upgraded to meet all of the fire
Fire
standards.
codes, correct. If they, currently, the intention is to keep the building, perhaps run electricity to it, but if it were to be used in any way, that could change the special use, and that fire alarm and other fire code triggers would come into play at that time. So we've asked them to leave it alone for the time being.
So then if they were to get approval for these two site plan and special use, they would still not have an occupancy permit for that building.
Correct. Yeah, in order to get an occupancy permit, they would need to put in a fire alarm.
Okay.
There was some conversation about whether they could tear that building down and just leave the pad.
Right.
And therefore not, if there isn't pad.
Right.
Underneath the building, and therefore not have to worry about detention.
Right.
Was that looked
Yes,
into?
we brought that up, but I believe the intention at this point is just to leave the building alone currently, correct?
The back one?
Yeah.
Yes, it's just to leave it alone as it stands. Cap all the utilities, disconnect all the utilities, but leave it alone.
But you realize that unless you upgrade the building, you would not be able to occupy it.
That is understandable,
Okay,
yes.
not a problem.
Can I just make a few comments? There would be some conditions attached to the ordinance that, since this is just parking for inventory only, that this would not be an area that customers would be brought to this lot. This is not a special use for an automobile dealership. This is a special use for a parking lot. Employees are going to park there. Excess inventory is going to be parked there. So I assume the intention is that you would not be having customers come onto this parking lot and walk around and look at inventory?
Exactly. It's just a storage area for inventory, as I said before, and for employees to come in there and for them to park.
So, thank you. So there would be a restriction in the ordinance to that effect, and prohibiting stacking of cars and the typical automobile dealership special conditions on a special use permit, so like no balloons and display items and things like that. And, the only thought that I was thinking of from a staff perspective is, you've got this old non-conforming house that's non-compliant with fire codes, et cetera, that the applicant's not planning on using. This is an opportunity to have it torn down. I know residents have complained about when it was a hotel, and I think illegal activity behind that house and behind the hotel. And if this is just a parking lot with a house that screens activity behind it, you're inviting trouble. You could have people living in the house that the owner may not know, squatters, who knows what sort of problems, parties in the house, whatever. This may be a good opportunity to have them, even though they're not doing like a full redevelopment like they ultimately hope at this point, a chance to get the house torn down, particularly if it's just a pad. Just leave a pad underneath, then they would not have to do any corresponding stormwater detention. Just my personal thought.
Well, that is part of the purview of this board, to attach a special condition.
You can do that.
Since,
And you're approving a site plan, I believe, right?
and a site plan.
Yeah.
So, my fellow commissioners, if we so choose, we could add that as a special condition for a special use, that the building would come down.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question at this point? Why, if you're not going to use it and you need the parking, why are you leaving that building?
Well, the current plan right now is to let winter run this course after we demolish the motel. And then after that's done, we may want to, as the plan developer said, redevelop that building. Maybe we could use it as a porterhouse later on. It's an option. We're leaving it as an option to the owner.
I see.
At this point in time, it's not.
You say
has not
porter
come-
house, you mean that someone would actually live there?
No, no.
Porters
no.
are the guys who speed down the
Yeah,
streets.
right.
But what would they be doing in the house?
Caddy shack.
They would basically be,
Bringing
looking-
cars over to the dealership to be,
basically, that's how
customers to
it
look
would
at.
be.
Since the customers aren't allowed to come.
Exactly. Since they won't be allowed to be on the actual site, they would, whoever's selling the car would go, Jim, Tom, bring the orange one over.
So the porters would be hanging out in the house until such time as the car is needed to be driven over.
Right, which comes back to your first comment, that it needs to be up to certain codes.
Correct, because it would be occupied.
It would be occupied, but when we come to that decision, we clearly will go towards that. But again, it could be demolished, it could remodel it. It's up to the owner to decide what he really wants to do with it. At this point in time, we just want to demolish the motel so it can serve for the employees' parking.
But
And
as
there'll be
the
no
owners
porters there until
No.
you get the proper construction.
No.
Of the
The porters will be in the dealership, and then they will get sent to the site to bring whatever car needs to be brought.
And as the owner's representative, you're not comfortable demolishing that building along with the rest of the building, the main motel at this time? Obviously, it would be less expensive to demolish it now than to demolish it later, unless there really is a plan to go ahead and remodel and upgrade it.
As the owner representative, okay, I would like to have it as an option. Besides being an owner representative, I'm also an architectural designer, and it leaves me options for future proposals for the owner. Okay, I'd rather leave the structure there, work from something, a base, than from nothing. Okay? Whether or not he decides to demolish it, that will be up to him. But we're giving him that option.
Can we
Better
be-
to have
oh.
many options than to have nothing.
Can we assume the structure will be secured so that there won't be, as we talked about, folks visiting there for
Absolutely.
bad behavior, for lack of another term? I mean, I
Absolutely.
live near that area.
Yeah, the plan after the demolition is, once the demolition has happened, we will try to put some form of lights there to keep that area bright. As most of you already know, if you drive by right now, it's very, very dark. So we'll try to put in lights. Our civil engineer is currently working on that, where he could provide lighting there. And also for the future parking lot lighting that's going to be there.
Now, none of that's included in our plans. In fact, there's a note here drawing attention to the fact that no lighting diagrams have been approved or requested at this time. So that's a further change than of what we're seeing here.
Again, that's after we demolish everything.
I understand that, but we're here talking about after the demolition. That's what we're talking about, parking the cars there.
Right, well, like I said, we're just gonna have floodlights that are gonna be on the house, the existing house. That's one of the reasons why we wanna keep it, is also so we can have lighting in there, and that would shine off. And let winter takes its course, and then after winter, we can get into the more hardcore design.
It seems you're comfortable knowing what the plan is, at least moving ahead. I wish we would have been shared that same information in here, because it clearly says that there's no change to lighting in my write-up here.
Okay, well, is that in the actual civil engineering drawings, or?
Right, what we asked for if the applicant was going to change lighting to, turn in those plans so that we could see it, because it needs to meet the 0-foot candles at the property line. In addition to wanting the property to be secure, we also don't want the neighbors to be
Sure.
Yeah, because that's right on the back of the property line, and
Exactly.
whatever lighting you have, you don't want it spilling over into the,
Right.
into the residential.
Correct.
Right.
That's it. I agree. Yeah.
Greg, since you started, why don't we go with you and have any?
Okay, yeah, I have quite a few questions, actually. Just warming up. So what are we doing when you take out the motel? Are we paving it? Is it gravel? Is it permeable
Once it's
paver?
demolished, gravel will be placed.
So it's all gonna be gravel?
Not the entire parking lot, just the actual area where the motel currently
So you'll
stands.
leave the
blacktop will be left.
asphalt that's there now?
Yes, as the stand.
And I understand from the write-up that you're gonna keep both the entrance and exit, or the two forms of, the two curb cuts into Ogden?
Yes.
Can I interrupt? Did he say it's gravel or paved parking?
Gravel.
Paved where they're at, gravel where the motel was.
But then you're going to pave it in the spring.
Once winter runs its course, yes.
So there have to be approval by the village board, just note to
For the time
allow
being.
temporary gravel parking, because all parking has to be on a solid surface. We don't allow gravel parking.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, Jill, perhaps you would address this, and please also yourself. So what's happening as far as the stormwater then is concerned with this?
They are requesting to put in stormwater for the area that they're disturbing, and then they would request a waiver for the rest of the site until the time that it was completely redeveloped.
So they're gonna stormwater just the area that the motel is sitting on? Where that gravel is, you're gonna dig it up and put something underneath there?
Yes.
And that's only gonna be volume, it's only gonna match the volume required for the footprint of the actual building itself?
Right.
Not the rest of the property?
Correct. But then if they were to redevelop in the future to redo the entire site, that's when the whole detention would be triggered. That's what they're requesting to the board.
And I think one of the questions for the board will be, if this, let's say we're 5 years down the road and there's no redevelopment, no acquisition, or maybe 10 years down the road, no acquisition of adjoining property, will the board go back and say, okay, now you have to engineer the full site as is required by code? We gave you a break because you were planning on acquiring property. They may not care, but I think I have to at least raise that as a possibility.
Or does a sunset get attached, or perhaps that's not the right term, but would there be something of that nature?
That's what I think I'm going to pose to the board as an option to consider. Again, the board may say, we're happy to get the engineering they're providing, and we don't care about the future so much, we trust it'll get redeveloped.
So to summarize, you're gonna take down the motel, put some detention there, fill it with gravel,
Yes.
stripe it or whatever, bring in employees as well as storage, keep the back building there, lock it and secure it, and add lighting to the property for right now.
For right now.
Anything else we should know about?
At this point in time, no?
I don't have any further questions.
Commissioner Van Buren?
Yeah, it all seems pretty loose to me. We got a lot of loose ends. I would like to see some of these things tied down, a sunset. Also, when are you going to do sometime in the spring, when are you going to do the rest of the pad where you're now putting retention? And when you put that in and you put solid in there, you lose that retention, and now you're going to have, what is our engineering going to say about the water runoff? There's a lot of loose ends here, and I don't feel comfortable with them. That's all I have.
Commissioner Thomas?
When I went there to look at I was surprised that, there's so many people still at the hotel, but there's no one at the hotel.
There's absolutely
Those
no
are
one
all
at the
employees of the car dealership. They're doing a great job. I mean, they're doing a great business here. Why are we tearing it down? Also, as in Commissioner Van Buren said, there's a lot of loose ends here that you're waiting for for spring or whatever, and all I can think of are kids getting into the
That's right.
rear house in the back that's not being torn down now, and kids or other people, and that needs to be addressed in a sunset code or clause that we need to have some reassurance that something is going to be done, not necessarily right now, but spring at the latest, you know. Something has to go on because it's plenty of space to fall through the cracks and be an eyesore, especially since you have people living right next door. That's all I have.
This lighting you talk about would be temporary flood lighting for security purposes on that house?
Yes.
That's what it would be?
Yes,
And-
for the site,
For the site?
for the site. As we know, it's getting quite dark very quickly, so
Because I
4:30
picture
is sundown.
lighting going toward the neighborhood on the south side,
No, not so much for the entire neighborhood, just for that property area, so it won't be so dark. It's currently, right now, if you go over there, it's pitch dark.
We just need to write it in.
Chairman, if I could add, if the commission's comfortable, you know, our engineer and staff will be reviewing any lighting plan that they turn in to make sure it meets that 0-foot candles at the
Okay.
property line, to make sure that it's an appropriate level. So I think the word floodlight might be, you know, the wrong word to be using, because, you know, a floodlight that, you know, is going out like that is not going to be approved by staff. so.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Bartel.
Those were my concerns as well. I'm delighted the hotel's coming down, that's for sure, because it's a terrible-looking piece of property. But I was concerned about the flooding, as Westmont has a flooding, you know, challenge sometimes, and so I don't want that to become an issue here, and the lighting as well. And I guess I'm not comfortable with that house. I just think, I agree with Mr. Pill. If you're going to demolish it at some point, maybe just have a conversation about doing it when you take the motel down. And that would alleviate the issue with the neighborhood and some other issues we had talked about.
Okay.
All right, I have to make an apology here as Commissioner Van Buren stated, I did not request any public input. The meeting got a little bit away from me, and I didn't control it too well, so I see there's a couple of members from the public here. Will either of you have any comments, either for or against? Okay, note that both people in the public signify they do not have any.
Larry Forsberg doesn't count, does he?
Larry, you did raise your hand. Okay. He counts very much.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask staff one additional question?
No.
Pretty please?
Sure, go ahead.
Jill,
Yes.
I'm not aware, I am aware of the parking situation that they have. I'm in the same area as they are, so I hear the complaining on a daily basis. I don't have any idea how many employee cars they would need. So is this ample space for employees now to alleviate this problem over on the street? Is that going to take care of it?
Definitely.
Or
right.
is it going to end up with, it's going to take care of it, and then 3 months from now, inventory is going to rise,
Right.
and then that's going to force out the employee? So, and maybe it's perhaps more a question for John also.
Well, it was going to be.
So it could start to be a solution right
Sure.
now, but as inventory increases, then it may become less of a solution. How do we control that?
And that's a great question, and I've always been a proponent, employee parking's always an issue with any business, and especially with the auto dealers, the employees tend to be the last kind of things they look out for, and the employees park anywhere they can other than on the property itself, because property's at a premium. So I am a proponent of having on the site plan, when they show striped spaces, not just this dealer, but any dealer, having spaces marked like with an E for employee and saying, we're gonna provide X number of employee spots. Here, I think you're providing 22, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
So what I would like to do in the ordinance, again, it's this reasonable special condition on a special use permit request, is to guarantee that 22 spaces will always be provided, a minimum of 22 spaces for employee parking. And, you know, they can show us on the site plan where those would be, so we can do periodic checks. I think the village should be able to distinguish in doing a drive-by between nice Porsche inventory and their employee vehicles that are parked on site. And of course, if we have a problem with employees parking on the street because they're cramming inventory on there, that's something, you know, enforcement can look at, I guess,
Right.
if it's a condition of the ordinance.
The residents let us know if the employees are parking on the street. Our police have been very active with going out there and putting parking restrictions. So if it becomes a problem again, I think that we could revisit the special use, correct?
Correct. And if it wasn't clear from the staff write-up, you know, this has been a big headache for the village. There have been a lot of neighborhood complaints to the chief of police, a lot of time spent by the chief of police trying to work with Portia, who's been a good business neighbor for the village, trying to come up with a solution. They've come up with a solution.
Right.
This is gonna, if the employees park there, it's gonna be a big help to these residents in the area. And it solves part of your inventory crunch issue, and hopefully is a bigger scope or scale of development in the future. So it could be a win-win, but you have to understand with some of the way this is handled on a kind of interim basis with gravel parking and poor lighting and a building left up, it raises some questions as to what's the long-term plan for this, because I don't know this is like the long-term vision the village has for the property, and I don't think it's your long-term vision either.
Clearly, no, it's not.
Right. And just to give a little bit of background, the sale of the property happened very quickly too. And so, you know, Porsche was buying the property, but then they also had to deal with long-term residents who were at the hotel and, you know, when those leases would end and then, you know, how quickly they could demolish the building. And they're also inviting the fire department in to do it as a training exercise. So there have been a lot of moving parts. So I think we can figure out the lighting, you know, our engineer will be checking the detention to make sure that's handled appropriately, and we obviously want that building in the back to be secured if it's not going to be used, so.
I think those are the key components.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I also have a few questions. If primarily, is time a constraint on our recommendation to the village board and the village board okaying or granting or not granting this a special use for you?
Yes, time is.
It is.
It is, yes.
So it wouldn't be good if we were to ask you to postpone this till next month? And we could get all of these loose ends tied up?
That would be kind of hard, yes.
Okay, not a problem. I just wanted to know.
Mr. Chairman, could there be, if there were loose ends that could be tied up before the board meeting, would that be something that, if you ask for changes to the
If we could
site
make
plan?
notations to the trustees that these would be concerns we would have.
And then the
Could be
applicant could
addressed
work
by
with,
ordinance.
and the applicant could work with staff to make sure those are noted on the site plan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not too in favor of retaining that building, to be quite honest with you. If you were to occupy that building, I would strongly suggest that it would be alarmed. Anybody entering that building would go to a central monitoring station, right to the police department, so any after-hours use by, unauthorized people to be in there, our police department could be notified right away. I think that should be a part of any special use requirement. Secondly, flooding, I think that's got to be a very big issue, because if I'm not, isn't it down at Blackhawk where we lost the one auto down on the southeast corner?
Yes.
Ogden and,
Motors.
Alpha Motors,
yeah.
correct.
So flooding is very definitely got to be addressed. Secondly, the unloading of your inventory. How do you do it now and how do you perceive to do it in the future?
Well, currently,
You receive it by the semi-trailer where it's the car carriers?
clearly, I mean, these are our vehicles, so these, it's going to be a semi that's going to be coming.
Because from what I see,
So
you're
so
doing,
My thinking is that the vehicle would, the truck would come in and unload in the main dealership, and then the port will probably bring the cars to the actual site.
and then they'll be driven over there?
Yes.
Because does the delivery vehicle with the automobiles on it now pull on the dealership property and unload?
I believe they do.
Okay. Thirdly or fourthly, whatever, it looks like you're gonna be stacking these vehicles bumper to bumper in rows?
Yes.
What are you gonna be doing for snow removal? Especially if we have another winter like last year.
Well, like we were saying right now, at this point in time, okay, it's just going to stay as is, just for employee parking right now. Once the,
No inventory in here whatsoever?
at this point in time, I don't think so. It's just going to be mostly more for employees at this point in time, okay? Once we start, this gentleman said the spring starts and we start actually redeveloping the area, we'll put those questions into points. Snow removal, things of that nature.
Because if these vehicles are gonna be stacked 1, 2, 3, 4 deep, side by side, from front to back in here, you're never gonna move any of these vehicles if you get a significant snowstorm.
You have to understand that that doesn't necessarily mean that each and every single space is going to be used. Okay, these vehicles tend to be quite valuable. Not everybody's going to be going in to purchase a Porsche every day. So clearly there'll be a set number of inventory. It's just the civil engineer, what he just did was give you a concept of what capability that site has of maintaining of inventory.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think this, the stacked parking, it would serve you too well, but that's strictly my opinion. Okay, the unloading of the vehicles would be taken care of then. The lighting, that's gonna be, we're not gonna demolish the building. Unloading, flooding. Okay, that's pretty much it. Staff, do you have any comments as to what we discussed so far?
No other comments other than our engineer will be reviewing the stormwater plan. I think taking down the building is ultimately, an excellent goal. So, if the, and we've recommended that to the property owner, so if they're comfortable with that, we would recommend that as well. And yes, we've also asked for snow inventory locations to be identified, just because the landscaping along the property lines is pretty narrow, so not a lot of room there unless you just, piled it in a corner, so.
Okay.
The good news is with the snow removal, since this is just for inventory and some employee parking, but they can always just limit the inventory stored on site and pile snow up in a corner and solve the problem that way.
Sure.
As long as they can get a plow through there.
All right. Let's have a little bit of a free-ranging discussion amongst the commissioners then as to, we're being asked for a special use permit. Do we just want to leave it as that per se? Do we want to put a few special notations on this special use?
I think that we should put our concerns, the ones that we've enumerated here about the building in the back, the lighting, our concern over eventual, what they're gonna do with the water.
Well, when you say we have a concern about the building in the back, Would you like to see it demolished, or?
I don't think that's been requested. It's requested by us. But I think what they are trying to do right now is relieve an immediate problem. And that's why we've got the loose ends. They want to be able to put their employees over there, relieve the problem in the neighborhood. Right now, it's not for inventory. And I think we're going to have to trust as we let this go that the trustees will look at the long-range plans with more detail.
And I think they want to get it done before the snow flies.
Right.
Because if we get another 30 days into this, it may be impossible to do this project before April or early May.
What if we just did just a special use permit request for an item A, and item B, site and landscaping, we'll do it, and then maybe add an item C, which these are our concerns which we feel need to be addressed.
And I think John may be the person to summarize those for us and recommend how we do that. I mean, I would love to see the house taken down, but it's their property, so. But I certainly think if you're gonna turn all the utilities off, that we have every reason to ask for it to be secured. Because once the utilities are turned off, they're basically saying we're not going to use it. And if that's the case, then it does need to be like either windows boarded or something so that, because kids will figure out a way to get in there.
Another option in line with what you're saying, which I think are great recommendations, are kind of to your point, which is a sunset clause, which is maybe have the applicant come back in a year or two, and if this has not been incorporated into a larger redevelopment of multiple properties, maybe you re-examine this. You know, they're kind of doing a short-term solution, but if this is looking like it's going to be a longer-term solution, maybe you want some more enhanced landscaping. Maybe you'd want a new fence. Maybe you'd want that house either improved or taken down. Maybe you want more sophisticated lighting and security. There's 2 points of ingress egress right now off of Ogden. If this were a normal development, we would only, and IDOT would only allow one. So, you know, there are things like that to look at that we're kind of hoping get resolved in the future, but may not. So maybe that's a way to handle it.
Well, one further question. I started to ask this question earlier, and then I got sidetracked on something else. So is IDOT going to be required to get involved in this?
Yes, they're required.
They don't ever move fast.
They don't. I'm not sure if they've responded yet.
Not yet, unfortunately. I've been calling.
And that could take us to spring right off the bat.
Not necessarily. It usually takes by what I was told, approximately 22 days. So we send out drawings, we send out all the required paperwork. So we're getting towards that point.
My recent experience with other developers is that they've been faster.
Oh, good. Well, just from my own personal opinion is, in being very familiar with what's going on up in that neighborhood, I would support this project as presented to us with a sunset and with a few conditions, which would be securing the building, this is myself speaking now, and that we pay special attention to stormwater, which I know you're going to, as well as any additional lighting that's added to the property so that it doesn't go ahead and create any problem with the neighbors. We don't need to go ahead and take one neighborhood problem and just move it over a half block.
Commissioner Pill, then, would you recommend a special use permit request with the sunset clause?
I would defer to our attorney on that and ask which is the best and most efficient way to do that. Either include it in with item A or to create a separate C list, which would include the sunset as well as some of these other conditions.
I like the idea of a separate C, here are our concerns of the Planning and Zoning Commission generally, which you want the board to consider.
All
And
right.
that can include a sunset.
That would be my feeling, that yes.
I would agree.
Can we discuss the sunset for a bit? Is this a fixed period that we determine?
Not
6
we.
months, 12 months, or?
I think you're just recommending the concept to the village board. If you are adamant about a term, certainly you can recommend a specific term.
So that would be left to the board to determine?
Yes.
Okay.
And they may say, we really don't think it's necessary.
I agree with that and the sunset clause thinking, because that gets us, it helps them with the neighborhood problem, but it doesn't handcuff us in case inactivity sets in and we're not saddled then with an eyesore. And it
In
tells the
perpetuity.
trustees what our concerns are, so if they hadn't thought of it, they'll think of it now.
Well, the product that they're selling doesn't call for a shabby-looking mess over there. So I'm sure that won't be the
That's
case.
exactly
But I like Greg's motion. Maybe we should make it into a motion. Your
Yes.
suggestion,
Item
make it
C.
into a motion.
Well, you guys have a beautiful facility now, and I'm sure that you're gonna wanna, as this becomes associated with an extension of your facility, you're certainly gonna wanna keep that Porsche standard, and I would assume that Porsche is also going to demand that you keep the standard.
Absolutely, sir.
Sure.
Yes.
I think this will solve everything and help you guys out and get you going and stuff like that, and then sometime in the future, we'll be able to see where the ultimate plan takes you.
Yes, sir.
Any further comments? Okay. Under planning and zoning, item 1.4.
The findings of fact for item A.
Public hearing first.
He went to the public.
Sign it.
115 East Ogden Avenue, request for a special use to allow a parking lot. Criteria number 1, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. The proposed outdoor parking lot for employees and for vehicle inventory of an existing automobile dealership is a passive use which will pose no impacts on the public health, safety, and welfare. Criteria 2, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. The proposed outdoor parking lot will be used solely to store vehicles and for employee parking. No automobile dealership activities will occur on this lot. No new lighting will be installed. Should I revise that to be approved by staff? Okay. As a result, this passive parking use will not adversely impact surrounding properties. Criteria 3, the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Surrounding properties are fully developed, and this use will not impede the orderly redevelopment of adjacent property. Criteria 4, adequate utilities, access ways, drainage, and/or other necessary facilities have been or are being provided. The applicant is seeking to provide stormwater detention on site for all newly disturbed areas of the property. The property is otherwise already serviced by adequate utilities, access ways, and other necessary facilities. Criteria 5, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. The 2 existing curb cuts onto Ogden Avenue will remain and will adequately service the property. This proposed parking lot will actually alleviate employee parking problems that currently exist for the nearby Porsche automobile dealership. Criteria 6, the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the village board pursuant to the recommendation of the Plan Commission. The applicant is requesting no variances in conjunction with this use, and this use otherwise meets all significant requirements of the zoning ordinance. The applicant is seeking a waiver of minor landscaping requirements and a waiver of full stormwater detention in the hopes of redeveloping this property with adjacent property in the future. Criteria number 7, the proposed use meets the special conditions of Special Condition 2. This use will not cause appreciable traffic congestion or hazard to pedestrian safety. In fact, this use will improve parking and traffic congestion caused by current Porsche employees parking on the public streets. This use is generally a passive parking use for the storage of inventory and will not result in any public traffic to the property and therefore will result in no significant traffic congestion or hazard to pedestrian safety.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement. Therefore, the findings of fact for a special use are approved and adopted. Under planning and zoning, item 14035, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, item A, special use permit request to construct a parking lot.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Bartel, seconded by Commissioner Pill. A question on the motion. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
Yes. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, item B, site and landscaping plan approval to construct a parking lot on a site with an existing non-conforming building with non-conforming setbacks and screening.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Van Buren, seconded by Commissioner Thomas, was that? Yes. Question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
Yes.
Do I need to make the motion, sir?
Please do. This would be item C.
Item C, a motion to recommend to the village board a possible sunset clause, security for the building, lighting review, and stormwater review. Are there any other points? John, do we have any others?
I think you said either demolition of the building or, if not, security, proper
That was the
security
first
for
one,
the
but
building.
we could expand that to include demolition or security for the building. Yes. As well as employee parking clearly marked on the site plan and designated at the site.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Thomas. Any question on the motion? Anybody care to add any items that were not covered? Seeing no hands raised, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. And Chairman Richard.
Yes. All right, sir, you have our recommendation for approval, and you note our concerns, and they'll be passed up to the village board. So, good luck to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Next item on the agenda, planning and zoning, item 14036, the Village of Westmont regarding a zoning code text amendment as follows. A, amend Appendix A, Section 4.17 on the Westmont zoning code regarding temporary storage pods.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item recently came up at a Building and Zoning Committee meeting, and it was discussed in October. We'd had some issues with temporary storage pods being considered a little bit too restrictive. We previously required a $250 cash bond, and then we would refund $225 so that the cost to the applicant was eventually $25. Instead, we're asking to change that so that it's just a simple $25 permit fee, which we feel is less of a burden to the homeowner. And then we'd also clean up the language, just cleaning up from economic development to community development. And then you have to put temporary storage pods on paved surfaces. You're only allowed one at a time. And you're only supposed to store personal property in pods. And you can also request an extension if necessary. Sometimes we have people that are, cleaning out houses from family members and, may have extenuating circumstances, and we wanted to allow a little bit of flexibility. So with that, the language is included. The deletions are marked out, and then the red bold shows the additions to the text. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, is there anybody from the public who will speak on this issue? I see 3 members in the public, no? I'm not gonna miss you this time, Larry. Okay, we'll close the public comment. We'll start with Commissioner Thomas, if you would, please.
I support the change as being less restrictive and more friendly to the users. I support it, the text amendment.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Van Buren?
Yeah, I think that this is a result of experimenting with a new concept, and this is probably what staff has learned has been most appropriate, so I'm all for it.
Commissioner Pill?
I feel if it's good enough for Commissioner Thomas, it's good enough for me. I do have one question. Since folks have been putting this bond up, do we have an idea then, statistically, how many of these, I never really see these anywhere. Are there, how many do we get a year? Do you have any idea? Just,
That's a good question. I would say probably between 10 and 20. I can follow up that next time
this
just to
was
be
more
sure.
of a curiosity, because I've seen them in other communities, and
Sure.
I've just never noticed anywhere around me or in driving around and stuff like that. So I was just curious if anybody, because I remember when we put this together, and I didn't recall seeing any place.
Yeah.
Last summer, Greg, we had 2 in my neighborhood.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes they last longer than what they're supposed to, which is why the ordinance was originally discussed. And then sometimes people will only get them for a day, and which is why we didn't want to make the requirements too onerous. So.
Gotcha.
Jill, how about have you had any experience with the bags? You know, the big, and is that, it's kind of the same concept?
Yeah, I think we would
But this
consider-
is more for debris than it is for furniture or that.
Yeah, it's
That's
more.
handled probably like a dumpster or what?
I think the bags are handled like a dumpster.
Yeah, okay.
My only question is, are they locked? When you talk about personal property and I'm wondering, are they locked when they're on site? Because, just for safety, so nothing's stolen?
Right. I think it's up to the homeowner. We don't necessarily require it.
Okay, that was my only
Be
question.
like locking your car, probably. It's like
Yeah, it's up to you.
down and lock it.
Okay, yeah, I was just
dark in
curious, I've
there.
never used one.
The ones I've seen, Commissioner, do have a HESP, and where you could put a padlock on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have no objection, sounds fine.
Paragraph D, I guess my question is, I can understand non-toxic and non-flammable. Who defines non-offensive in nature? John?
Boy, is that a little bit vague.
Chairman's in charge of that.
Yeah, he's our resident good taste police.
Commissioner Thomas can't use it.
In non-offensive in nature, yeah, and that language dates back to when this was originally put in there. I can't recall the exact reasoning at the time. Trying to,
I'm not
I'm
sure
not
how we would
objecting to
define
it.
it.
I was just,
It'll be difficult to define if it comes up.
yeah.
Well, the other question I had was good cause. That seems hard to define as well, if you think about, I mean, I understand the extension needed for home remodeling and so forth.
Right.
But it would be subjective, I think, if it was,
It is. It allows staff
Addressed.
a little bit of flexibility, and then it's up to the homeowner to make a good case for that.
okay.
I have less concern with the good cause, which is kind of common language that's used, like, hey, prove your hardship, staff
Right.
can extend it. The offensive language is something that courts sometimes look at if we actually try to enforce that, where they'd say, that's a little bit broad, but if they're storing ammunition and guns and contraband, that's actually criminal, and we said, well, you violated the zoning ordinance because you have offensive materials, I think a court would say, yeah, that's pretty clear that's offensive.
Okay.
Further along those lines, Commissioner Carmichael, I would say, would it be no perishable food products should also be allowed?
Has that been an issue ever?
Not to my knowledge.
But what if you're putting in a new kitchen and you have some flour and some
Well,
sugar and,
Yeah, but that's not
Put it
considered
out there.
perishable,
Well,
About
I mean,
goldfish or?
keep in mind too that you can't keep, you're not supposed to keep it for more than 15 days.
Yeah, the time limitations are really going to take care of that.
Yeah.
Right.
I do have one other thing on the front page. Temporary storage pods shall not be placed on non-paved surface, public rights-of-way, period. What about crushed gravel?
I mean, technically, you're not supposed to have gravel as an approved parking surface. So are you talking about like if it was a non-conforming driveway?
Yes.
Do we have a lot of those?
We have a few left, yeah.
Well, the way this is written, you would only be able to place the pad, or a pod, I'm sorry, on a driveway,
On a paved
Paved
driveway.
on a paved driveway.
Right,
Is that the intent, that we want it on the driveway?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where
what
you
we
see
don't
all
want
the-
is to put it on the front yard and kill the grass for 15
Okay.
days. So I mean, we could say driveway.
Well, maybe that's better, if you have some driveways that aren't paved, as long as it's a driveway.
Yeah,
It's only 15 days, it shouldn't be a problem, I wouldn't guess.
Yeah,
It's reasonable.
That'd be the only question I have.
okay.
we were finding a fact on this one? Yeah, we did.
Any further comments by the commissioners? John, a question then, we're being asked to recommend this as per it's printed or as per our notations on it, or what?
Yeah, I think you're being asked to approve what's provided, subject to your comments.
Subject to the comments?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't think a separate motion is needed. You've given some direction to staff, and the minutes will reflect that, and I'm sure Jill will be diligent in cleaning it up before it gets to the board.
Lord knows we need somebody to pick up after us, Jill.
I'll do my best.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, Planning and Zoning Item 14036. Item A, amend Appendix A, Section 4.17 of the Westmont zoning code regarding temporary storage pods.
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. Question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes,
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Pill,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes,
Mr. Van Buren votes yes, and Chairman Richard.
Yes. All right, you have our recommendation. Staff can tell you when you go before the...
We'll bring this revised language to the village board for their
Okay.
approval.
Any further questions, comments by the commissioners?
The only comment I have, I see we have two young gentlemen in the audience, and are you guys here as part of a school project?
It's through the Boy Scouts work on citizenship in the community.
Citizenship in the community. I was a merit badge counselor for that for 20 years. Good luck with it.
Yeah,
Are you life scouts now, or
Work on it.
working on life?
that's nice.
Great,
Good luck.
welcome.
Any further comments?
I'm just thinking out loud. We send these issues to the village board, and unless, a lot of times they're not in the paper, the action that was eventually taken. And I, for example, have satellite, so I don't have the closed, the TV. Is there any way we could get follow-up on things after we,
Sure.
after they've been dealt with by the village board?
Yeah, I can do
We
that.
are interested, or we wouldn't be here.
Okay,
So if we could get a little follow-up, that'd be nice.
yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
I do have one subject for discussion, if you got a few minutes. Since we're being asked for side yard adjoining a street, fence variances, do you think we should recommend rethinking the ordinance? Because it seems time and time, every corner lot, they're asking for a variance.
I think it would be a good idea to go back through our recent, or let's say over a 2-year period, and see how much of a factor it's been. If it's a big factor, then it's worth considering. If it's not, it's not a big deal.
I asked Jill that question the other day, and she has some figures for us.
Yeah, actually, in response to the chairman, he was asking about the number, and we've had 9 fence variances in 10 years, so it's approximately 1 a year. And then we've had 2 since the fence text amendment was done in 2012. So back then, in 2012, the requirement was that in a corner lot, you had to meet the 35-foot setback. So in this case, you know, the fence would have had to been, you know, halfway through her lot, more than halfway. And so we made that requirement less restrictive and made it 15 feet, or she could attach, you know, to the corner of her house and go all the way back. In that case, you know, she would still lose a significant portion of her lot, which is why she thought it was useful to come here. So I think another question is how many fence permits have we had approved since then on corner lots that have actually met the requirements? And we've had several since then. I think we've had more than 2. So personally, I think the text amendment is working so that you're seeing less variances, but you may be seeing more too. So, you know, there's always that question about whether or not you'd like to be a little bit less restrictive.
It's interesting that people have complied with it. Not everyone
Yeah.
is seeking a variance, which would be a problem.
Right.
Some people say, oh yeah, that's reasonable, I can comply with that.
And in fact, I had a couple applicants who were waiting for the text amendment in 2012, and then I called them after it was finished, and then they came in immediately and got fence permits because they thought it was much more applicable at that point. So
then it would appear right now that the ordinance is working fairly.
I would say it's
well.
working fairly well, yeah, because we've only had 2 since 2012. That was done in May, and we've had 2 variances, one in August and then one in November. So, yeah, I think it's definitely made an improvement.
I replaced a 6-foot closed fence with an open, 3.5-foot fence, and it's beautiful. And in fact, my neighbor between our properties, he wanted no fence at all when we tore the old one back. I said, no, you have to have a fence between the properties, you really do. But it's aluminum, it's a nice fence, and it's really upgraded the property. It looks fantastic. I know a lot of people would say, well, you've lost some privacy there, and that's true. But it looks great.
I have no fence.
There are
on-
2 sides to the,
I have no fence on both of my sides.
yeah. Then,
I have good neighbors, though.
I have a corner lot, and I have no fences.
You're a lucky man.
I have a dog that says he likes them.
Choose. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.